In the valuation DCF sheet, we arrived at enterprise value. And from the enterprise value, I reduced the debt component. But here, I have arrived at purchase consideration, which is called equity value. So to reach to the enterprise value, we have to add the debt component. So it is one and the same. So now if you see here, I've got the enterprise value here as 17,000. So if you need to go back to the equity value, you would reduce it. This is what we did there. But now we are taking equity as a base and going to the enterprise value. We were adding it. That's why this is on the other side. Any further questions? That's correct. That's correct. All right. If there are no further questions, let's move ahead to the next file. Open the next version of the file. File number 3. Herein we are going to talk about this 60 cash form. File number 3. Right? Now, what do we have to do here? Here we have to work out the cash component that we are going to pay. But before that, there are some inputs that I need to, call out here as a common sheet, because here we are going to figure out the cash requirement in total. Somebody was asking this point that there would be some sort of a merger cost, meaning you would have some professionals, investment bankers who would support you. So what is the payment that we are going to make? What is the amount of loan that we are going to take? What is the interest rate on it, and all that stuff? So let us cull out all of those inputs. I'm going to see what is the cash available in both the companies. In the input tab, I've got the cash position as 1453 and 1739 given over here. So let's pull those values here. And the cash payment percentage is 60%, as we discussed in the uh, previous sheet. Cash usage, I will speak about it very shortly, but let's pull the data that's there in row number 24. And below that as well, we've got the interest rate, debt charges, plus written cash, deal charges given as 1%, and the tax rate. This tax rate I can simply pull from this energy sheet. We've got this tax rate. So let's pull all of these formulae here. So please pull all of these data once and one. See how do we use. Questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. Tax rate is not equal to growth rate. I'm sorry. Have I taken the growth rate from there? Yeah, my mistake. I should have taken it from row number 8. Thanks for bringing this point. It should have been from row number 8. Yeah, thanks, Abhinandan, Abhinav, and Abhijit. Thanks for this. And Vishaki, I'm going to talk about this cash usage now. Yeah, this I did by mistake. Now, let's proceed. What I was talking about, that in the previous sheet when I was discussing this fact, that what is the total purchase consideration? The total purchase consideration is, let's say, 15,281. Let me just highlight that in a separate color. 40% of this, we are making the payment in the form of stock, and 60% of this we are paying in cash. So this is what the 60% cash payment indicates. So what is my total consideration? 60% of that is going to be this. So 60% multiply this with $15 billion. So 15 billion into 60% is roughly about $9 billion. So we're going to pay $9 billion in cash. Right? That's the cash requirement for the purpose of making the payment to the shareholders of PQR. But apart from that, obviously we need to pay to the, the professionals who are the investment bankers who are going to support us. So to them, we're going to pay the deal charges is given here in row number 9. I'm going to pay 1% of the total purchase consideration. So the total purchase consideration is again here. We're going to pay 1% of that over here. This is the amount of deal charges that we'll have to pay to the investment bank. Okay. So the total cash that I need over here, as you can see, is not just $9 billion, but also this $153 million. In total, I need 9322. In total, I need 9322. So what we are going to do, we're going to check our own pocket and see what is the amount of cash that I have already got. So ABC will first of all see its pocket and see that I've got a cash of 1.4, approximately $1.5 billion. This is the amount of cash that I have in my bank account as of today. Right? Now the question is that can I use this entirely? I can. If I want, I can use it entirely. It's my personal call because ABC is taking this decision. ABC will use this cash. But remember this point. If you use the entire cash, then you don't have any cash left in the company, and definitely for meeting some regular expenses, some petty expenses in the company, you need to have some cash position in the company. So maybe you might want to decide that I would use only 50, 60, 70% usage of it, and I keep the balance part in my company itself. And there could also be possibility that apart from PQR, this company is also considering purchase of some other entity XYZ. And for that, I need some more cash. So you may decide that for this deal, I'm going to use only 40% of this for the cash payment. So I need, what is the amount of cash I need? Cash required is basically, if I just put that formula here, the cash required is this much, 9322. If I take the summation of these two, this is the amount of cash that I require. But what is the cash available? Cash available is basically 1453 into 40%. It's only 581. So what amount of cash can I use? I can use 581. Similarly, if I notice what is the amount of cash that I've got in the PQR, this is like ABC. Let me put cash available in PQR. Cash available in PQR 1739. Now bear in mind that we are paying to the shareholders of PQR. Once you pay them, this company belongs to you. And when this company comes to you, you basically control the overall company. You own all the assets, including the cash. So 1739, you decide to use 100% of it because you're saying that I would use 1739 from here and 581 from here. So I'll have a total cash of 2320 that I'm going to utilize. So eventually what's going to happen? The balance portion I'm going to raise in the form of debt. So this is the amount of cash available in PQR. This is the amount of cash available in ABC. So let's do it one by one. Forget about ABC. Let's look at the first two cells now. That if 9322 is the cash requirement and 1739 is the cash availability, then what is the amount of cash that I'm eventually going to use? Entire 1739. So don't be tempted to straight away put this formula here that this is equal to this multiplied by 100%. Do not do that. Because if you're going to do this, then you are invariably trying to say that I will always use 1.7 billion. But you also have to check, do I really need 1.7? In this case, I need 9.3 billion. So the answer is yes, I need 1.7. But let us assume, I'm just trying to change the assumption, say somebody who is receiving this file says that the cash usage, the cash payment is not going to be 60%, it's going to be only 1%. Let's assume it is only 1%. Now what will happen? In that case, you need only 306 because 153 to be paid to the shareholders of PQR plus 153 to be given to the investment banker. Let's say you decide that not 1%, let's say I'm going to pay them 5% cash. Now what's going to happen? Now you need to pay 764 to the shareholders of PQR and you're going to pay 153 to the investment banker. So in total you need 970. So tell me, what is the amount of cash that I am eventually going to use? That's not going to be 1.7 billion because I don't need that much cash. I need a cash which is only 917. So you see that if it is 917, I put 917 here. If it is 9 billion, then I put 1.7 billion because it's going to be the min of cash required and cash available. Available is this multiply by this formula will decide what is the amount of cash you're going to eventually. And you see that I have changed this to 5%. Let me reinstate the 60% assumption back. And now you see it is showing $1.729 billion in all of these cases because now my cash requirement is pretty high. But this formula is robust enough to automatically adjust the result if the cash payment is on the lower side. And if I don't need that much of cash, obviously my cash usage is going to be on the lower side. Right? So let me take a pause here for you to ask any questions if you have it. But what logic have I used here? I've taken the min of cash required and cash available. This is what I've used. Cash required and cash available, whichever is lower. Fair enough? And same logic you would apply now that let's pick the same formula. Cash required now is this plus this, but I've already used 1.7 billion. So out of 9300, I've already got 1739. So what is the cash requirement now? Reduce that number, and this is my net cash requirement. And what is the cash availability? 1453 into 40%. That's the cash availability because now I'm going to use only the 40% of $1.4 billion. Right? Drag it on the right hand side. That gives you the final cash of ABC being used. So eventually, even after you use the cash, you still have the funding requirement. If you do the delta like 9100 plus 150 minus 1700 minus 581, that gives you a net cash requirement, that you still require a cash of $7 billion. This is your net cash requirement, right? So effectively, whatever is your cash requirement, that is equal to your debt requirement also, because that's the amount of debt that you're going to raise. You don't have a choice because you've already used the cash which is available in your pocket. You've already used the cash which is available with PQR, and now you don't have a single penny left. So you are forced to take a new loan of $1 billion if you have to go for a cash deal like this, right? Does this make sense? Take a minute to do this and let me know in case you have any questions. Okay, let me read the questions. Min formula, what is that doing? So this min formula is basically trying to decide that what is the amount that I actually need to use. So look at this. If the cash requirement is 100 and cash available is 80, then what is the amount of cash which is used? That will be 80, right? And let's say if the cash requirement is 100, the cash availability is 120. Then what is the amount of cash that you're going to use? Only 100, because you don't need more than 100. You have 120 in your pocket, but you don't need more than 100, so you would use 100. So the logic is that we are trying to take the min of both of these things, right? So the debt component, Vishaki, is that after you see that in this case I need $9,300 million dollars, and I've got a cash of only 2320. I combine these two. On a net basis, I still need the cash to the extent of $7 billion. So that's the amount that I'm going to raise in the form of debt. Because now I don't have cash, but I still need this cash. So I don't have a choice but to go for the debt component. Or if you would like to ask the ABC shareholders to infuse additional equity, that's a different part. But if that doesn't happen, then obviously this is the amount of debt that you eventually require. And this 581 is basically the amount of ABC cash into 40%. Because you recollect, we discussed this point that in total, these two companies have got a cash position of 3192, but I'm going to use 100% of this and only 40% of this because I want to keep some funds in my company. So that's why 1453 into 40% is 581. So Meher, to your point, are we giving first preference to PQR? Not really. I have put PQR first and then ABC. You could put ABC first and then PQR as well. Because see, after the merger, both are one and the same entity. So you could have done it this way as well, that the total is so and so. The total is 3192, and I'm going to utilize 70% of it or 80% of it. That gives you this number. That also could be done, right? Vidhi, I did not understand your question. If there is an existing debt, will it be repaid from the proceeds? Now, which proceeds are you referring to? There is no proceed which is coming in the company. The entire cash is being paid to the shareholders of PQR. So company is not going to receive any money out of it. So there is no cash proceeds within the company. Hence, there is no question of actually deducting it from the debt. So we don't have any cash to be able to pay that component. Now ABC has got existing debt. That is fine, but I'm assuming that this merged entity will assume that debt and it will pay it in future. But the proceeds that we're talking about, the cash that we pay, which you see here, $9 billion, this $9 billion is being given to the shareholders of PQR, right? ABC has got existing debt, PQR has got existing debt. Both of these debts will get merged into the will be taken up by the merged entity. So they will keep on paying it in future because this proceeds will directly go to the shareholders, right? Okay, great. Let's move ahead then. Now, what happens is when you go to the bank for raising a loan of $7 billion, which is obviously a pretty big amount, what do you think the bank is going to do? I'm going to say that, okay, I gave you that loan, but let me do my own processing. So there is some bit of debt charges which are involved. And debt charges are usually taken because of the due diligence, the legal due diligence that is done, the documentation work, the legal work, and all that stuff that the bank has to do. So the bank typically charges some amount which is called debt fees, right? You could also call it as a financing cost or a financing fees. So when we take a home loan, then we also pay some sort of 0.5% to 1% of the home loan as processing charges or file charges. So that's called debt charges. For a bigger loan, this percentage is pretty small. So I'm taking the loan amount into 0.1%, which means that this is the amount that the bank is going to charge in the form of debt charges. But you know what typically happens? This company is raising a loan of 7001 million, and the bank is going to say that I will charge 7 million on it. Now I don't have cash. So I will tell bank that you need to take 7. So why don't you just add it to my loan amount and give it to me? So the fresh loan that I'm going to take would eventually be 7001 plus 7. So it is going to be 7008. So what happens is if I have to compute the interest next time, I'm going to pay 10% interest. It will be 10% of this amount, which you can see on the right hand side. That's going to be the interest expense. And this is what I was talking about before, that if you take a loan for making the payment in cash, that would mean there is a huge amount of leverage. There is this interest cost, fixed cost that the company is going to incur. $700 million is the amount that we are going to pay in the form of interest every year. So it's pretty huge. So you have to take a call for it whether it actually makes sense for you to do it or not. Right? Let me read a couple of questions now. It's also the debt service charge charged by creditors. Now, Vanikat, I didn't understand this question for rescheduling loan on new company name. No. That is separate. This debt service charge is more like a processing fees. You could say that I'm taking a fresh loan, so I'm paying processing fees. So you go and take a fresh home loan, personal loan, or whatever loan. There is a bit of amount which goes towards the file charges or processing charges. For a smaller loan, we usually pay somewhere between 0.5% to 1%. But here, the amount is pretty big, so the debt charges or the processing charges are 0.1%. Does that make sense? So that gives you the interest expense. Now, let's see when ABC and PQR, yeah, I'm coming to that, Abhijit. So when ABC and PQR would have created their projections, at that point in time, what they would have done, they would have said that I have got, ABC would have said that I've got a cash of $1.45 billion, and this is such a huge amount which it has kept in the bank account. So it is generating 4% interest income on it. Similarly, PQR has put in $1.7 billion in the bank account, and PQR is also generating 4% income on it. But see, after you do this deal, you would no longer have this much cash in your bank account. So, whatever amount of cash that you have used for the purpose of this deal, that cash is no longer going to be there in your bank account, which means you would eventually lose out on the interest income that you were getting before. So that is more like the loss of interest income that you were generating before. So earlier I was having 4% income on it, but now I would be able to have that. It becomes a cost for me, which is nothing but amount of cash that I've used from PQR, the amount of cash of ABC that I've used, multiply by 4% interest income that I was getting before. Now I wouldn't get it. So it's more like an opportunity cost for me. And because I'm using this cash over here, this cash will no longer generate 4% interest income for me. It is more like an opportunity cost, or you could simply say that it is the loss of interest income in future. Because earlier I had it, now because I'm executing this deal with this cash, now I wouldn't have. Right? So it's more of a cost for me. Or you could say it's going to be deducted, so I've added it to cost. Right? Venikit, could you please mention your question again? I couldn't understand. It says, how about that even ABC to PQR? You mean this company has given some loan to PQR? There is some intercompany loan which has been given. If that's the case, that gets cancelled. But yeah, okay, that gets cancelled because the thing is, after the merger, this one company owes something else to the other company. So before the merger, what would have happened? Let's say if there was 100 rupees of loan which was given by ABC to PQR, then ABC was getting 10% income on it. Let's say 10 rupees, and PQR was showing it as an expense of 10. But after this, the both of these would get cancelled once you combine these two. So it will get cancelled. So even if you don't do any treatment, automatically it has to be cancelled because in one P&L you are taking a plus towards interest income, and the other P&L you are taking a minus towards the interest expense. So it will automatically be cancelled. You don't even need to do that adjustment because it will be automatically cancelled. All right. Now, from a P&L standpoint, interest expense is going to increase your cost, and the interest income is going to reduce your income. So effectively, both are your merger costs. Merger cost, interest and debt, and income loss is also your merger cost. And on the top of it, what happens is the amount that you have paid to the investment banker. You see this amount over here in row number 14. This amount that you have paid, 153, is also your merger cost. But you don't really take it in one go. So you have an option to basically amortize this expense over a period of next 5 years. Because the point is this $153 million is a pretty huge amount. And it has been incurred not because for this one particular year, but I have incurred it for the sake of executing this deal. So that's why we basically take the amortization concept of it. So this $153 million cost that I am going to pay to the professionals or the investment bankers who will support me as part of this deal, that I'm not going to take in one go in my P&L. I will take it in pieces. So I will take it in 5 equal tranches in the P&L in the next 5 years. So what happens is this charge would be amortized over the next 5 years. And yes, you got it right, Riddhi. So this component, yeah, Vishaki, sorry. So you got it right that the debt charges would also be taken along with it. So it's not just 153 that you see here, but also the debt charges that I've paid. That's also a one-off expense that I've incurred. I'm going to amortize the overall 160 amount over a period of 5 years, and I've got this 5 years of amortization period right here. So I'm going to take that in this row. So taking all these three together, I'm able to see that this is finally my pre-tax impact, or you could say the merger cost. This is your merger cost, pre-tax. Yeah, Richie, I'm coming to your point. This is your merger cost, pre-tax, because I haven't yet accounted for the tax adjustment that I would need to do in count. So this is the pre-tax merger cost, right? Now, by the time others are working on it, Richie, let me take your point again. So, what is this 4%? Eventually, what happens is like right now you see the P&L of ABC and PQR. Both ABC and PQR have got good amount of cash in their bank account. So, what would have happened right now if this deal was not done? Then the same amount of cash would have been parked in the bank account, and I would have generated 4% income on it. But because I'm doing this deal, I'm using that cash, I'm withdrawing it from the bank. So I would lose on the interest income that I was getting before. So it's more like an opportunity cost for me. Or in simple words, it's the loss of interest income that I was getting. All right. So taking all of these together, we have been able to work out the pre-tax merger cost. Now, why this pre-tax and post-tax is important? Because we discussed this point in detail in the valuation topic also. Like we spoke about the interest expense. So when you pay $701 million of interest expense, which you see here, it is a nominal amount, 701. Similarly, 93 is a nominal amount. On a net basis, 826 is the nominal amount of interest expense or loss of interest or the amortization. But when you take it to your P&L, your profitability is reduced to that extent. Your PBT goes down, your profit before tax goes down, which eventually means that on this 826 component, you don't have to pay tax. If this was not spent, then you would have been paying tax on the entire income that you were generating. But because you've got this 826 expense hitting your P&L now in the form of expense and your profit is going down, you save on the tax. So that tax saving is obviously something that needs to be adjusted here. So post-tax impact is what is relevant for us. Like in the valuation, I talked about this, that it was cost into 1 minus tax rate. This is what we discussed here. That's exactly what we're going to do here, that we will take this into 1 minus tax rate. So what's the tax rate? Let's go back to the synergy, and the tax rate is given here as 30%. I'm going to pull it from here. That gives me the final merger cost. So this is basically the merger cost, which I have to capture. This is the real merger cost which is hitting you for executing this. All right. Meher, we are including chartization. It What is happening in interest cost is that this $7 million is the additional loan that I would take. The original loan is 7001, but 7 million is the additional loan that I will take. So effectively, what happens on an annual basis, I pay interest on it. That's one. But in the beginning, when I take a loan of 7008, which is 7001 plus 7, I get only 7001 because 7 million is paid as an expense to the company, to the bank. That expense is also going to be amount. Interest on this amount is different, and this debt charges is the one-time cost that you are paying to the bank is different. Yeah, Abhinandan, whatever a cost you are incurring on account of this merger is part of your merger cost, right? And what is the definition of this merger cost? The definition of merger cost is that just for executing this merger, what are the costs that I'm going to incur? I'm going to lose on the interest income. I'm going to pay the deal charges or the debt charges. I'm going to pay higher interest. All of these are part of my merger cost, which would eventually reduce my profit. So if I put it in simple terms now, what are we going to do as the last step? We will take the net profit of combined entity, of merged entity, which is going to be simply net profit of ABC pre-merger, which is what I discussed before as well, plus net profit of PQR merger, plus post-tax synergies, minus post-tax merger cost. This is how we are going to compute the net profit merged entity. This is what we're going to do as the next step now, that we will take the net profit of the companies before the merger, add the synergy component, subtract the merger cost to be able to find out what is going to be the net profit of the combined entity after this merger has been done. All right. So take a minute to complete this, and then please open version number 4, wherein we are going to compute the net profit of the merged entity. So we would first of all, we've already computed synergy, we have already computed merchant cost. So we would first of all compute the net profit of both the companies in the 5 years of projection. So we will do that first, and then we'll proceed to the net profit of the merged entity. So these are the 4 elements that we have to capture to be able to work out the net profit of the combined. Right? So take a minute, complete it, and then we'll move on. Any further questions? All right, I assume there are no further questions then. Let's move on to the file number 4. Please open version number 4. Please open version number 4. Let me please do- Yeah. Now in version number 4, as you can see on my screen, what we're going to do, as I said in the sheet, this is exactly what we need. Let me paste that over here as well. This is what we are trying to do. We're trying to work out that what is the net profit of the merged entity. And for this, we need four things. So the last two things that you see, synergy and merger cost, we have already computed, right? We already computed that in this particular sheet. Like when we were discussing in the previous sheet, we already computed that. Now, the synergy was also did in the very first slide. Now, the task is basically to work out the net profit of ABC and PQR before the merger, right? So, I'm going to put the relevant parameters of ABC and PQR out here. So, if you recollect, I've got the 2022 data of ABC and PQR in the input tab. So, I'm going to pull that over here one more time. So, go there, pull the data from here. We have got revenue, operating cost, depreciation, interest, tax, everything. Pull that over here, and then you can take the delta or the difference, which is revenue minus sum of all expenses, to be able to work out the net profit. This is a net profit. And on the same lines, you can do it for PQR as well, which is there in the input tab, 9 billion, right? And then at the end, you can figure out the net profit liabilities. There it is, right? So you call the data from the input tab F4 and G4, and then find out the delta that gives you the net profit after tax for the first year. That's for the first. Take your time, finish it off, and then we'll move on. So this is just a direct pull that I've done from the input tab. Now, what do we need to do after this? As I said before, usually the projections are prepared with the help of financial model. So these projections would basically need to be backed by a detailed driver-based financial model. But in this example, as I said, the focus is more to understand how you basically proceed in terms of doing a merger-related analysis. So the discussion is not around how you create a detailed financial model, because that's something that we've already discussed in the camera manufacturing case. So we use the subject and we build a detailed financial model. So here, I'm just going to use a high-level assumptions for populating all these data points. So what I'm going to do, you see in the input tab, we had got this figure that the growth rate in the projections of ABC is going to be 20%. So I'm going to increase that revenue by 20% every year. So you take this and increase it by 20%. Similarly, on this PQR as well, you can take the previous year and increase the projections by 25% assumption or whatever that is. You do it over here. All right. Increase the revenue, and in fact, if you want, you can increase all the operating expenses and everything by 40% or 20%, same rate that you've used for revenue. You could do for others as well, or what you could do to apply the growth rate, one and the same thing that you could apply the same proportion going forward as well. What I mean by proportion is you look at the percentage in the first year that operating expenses are usually some X percentage of revenue. Apply the same percentage going forward. So if operating expenses are, let's say, just taking an example, if it is say 60% of revenue, then going forward, if you know the revenue figure, 60% of that you allocate towards the operating cost, right? So what we are going to do as a next step is that I'm going to take this, which is my revenue, multiply that with the percentage, which is nothing but the operating expenses as a percentage of revenue. But bear in mind one thing, that you have to copy and paste this formula down as well for the depreciation, for interest expense. I mean, I don't want to get into all of those logics that how I would do it, because in financial model we know how this is captured. So here it is more like a high level assumption, and I'm just trying to put some financials in place for ABC and PQR. If everything increases, then if revenue increases at a certain rate, and all other items would also increase at the same rate. So what we could have done, we could have straight away said that forget the other items. Let us straight away increase the profit after tax at 20%. I could have done that. That's the simplest thing that we could do. Or you fix the row number 4 over here so that you could copy and paste this formula down, because the revenue is there in row number 4. Every time I want to take operating expense divided by revenue, depreciation divided by revenue, interest divided by revenue, right? And over here also I have to pick these figures from the row number 4. So I'm fixing just the row number 4, and then you could copy and paste this formula down for all of these cells. But as I said before, if you don't want to get into this, all of that, let's ignore all of that. Ignore all of this, because what are we interested in? You do not want this, ignore it. Because what do you want at the end of the day? You want simply this net profit figure. And this net profit figure you can straight away increase at 20%, which is given there. So logically speaking, we don't even need any of these items which are given in between. I'm just trying to show you that this is how you would compute. Otherwise, I don't need this at all. Right? So we don't need that. In case you would like to skip it, please skip that. It's not essential at all. In this analysis, I'm trying to figure out the net profit only, and eventually the EPS. So what would I do with the revenue, operating expense, and all that stuff? Right? So if you want, as I said, let's ignore it. I just wanted to show you once, and which I've already done. So straight away, increase the net profit at that 20% growth rate which is mentioned, and similarly use the similar growth rate for the PQR and work out the net profit of that entity. Right? So this is the important part that we need. So we would take this only. Does that make sense? Take a minute before we move. So Abhijit, I believe your question is answered. I just noted that question. All right. Any other questions till this stage, and then we can proceed. All right. Now, what I want to do, if there are no further questions, let's proceed ahead. Now, what I want I'm interested to do, I'm interested to figure out the net profit. Now that net profit has already been row and in the other row. Here in this table. If some data is given in a row and you would like to put that in a column, which option of Excel can you use to be able to do that? How can you move the data from the row to a column? So right, will be correct. So thanks for putting it. So this is basically the transpose function. But transpose is like a special category of function. You can't just use transpose like any other function. What we do, like I'm having the latest version of Excel, which is the licensed Office 365, the latest version. So I have a different feature that I will show you in 2 minutes. But let's say I'm assuming that most of you would not have it because this version was updated just a couple of months back. So in case you have the older version of Excel, then this transpose function was included in a slightly different way in the old school of thought. So I'm going to show that to you. First of all, you have to select the entire range wherein this result is required. So just be very clear on it. We have selected the entire range, right? And then write the transpose function. And then we would select the entire range which has got the source data. So my range is given in F9 to K9. So step number one, select the entire range wherein the data is required. Step number two, select the source data. And step number three is basically to use Control Shift Enter. So press the Control key, do not release that. Press Shift key, don't release that either, and then press Enter. So what's going to happen when you press Control and Shift and then press Enter? Then all these three keys are basically being pressed at the same time. So use Control Shift Enter, and you notice this formula gets replicated in the entire range, and it shows you the data which is transposed. You must use these three steps in case you have the old version of Excel. So the steps for using transpose function of old school of Excel. I'm writing this old school because there is this other thing that I'm going to show you, which is very good. So step number one, yeah, okay, I must take the data from 2021, so I've taken it incorrectly. Thanks for bringing that point. I should have taken it from here, right? So which is G9 to this. So we'll start with 1362 and end over there. Thanks for pointing it out. Now the steps for transpose are, number one, you select the entire range wherein the result is dated. Step number two is that you write the transpose function. Step number three is, or in fact over here, transpose function and provide reference to entire source range. And the last step is basically press Control Shift Enter. Press Control Shift Enter. Right? So what do we do over here? This is what we have done. Let me repeat that in case you missed it. You can copy and paste, Vishaki. You have to do it in this way. So Prachi, I'm going to show that one more time for the PQR. The process is same. Step number one, select the entire range wherein the result is required. I have selected this range. Then I'm going to write equal to transpose, and I'm going to provide reference to the entire source range, which is from from G17 to K17. That's what I would like to pick. And finally, in the step number three, I'm going to press Control Shift Enter, which populates the data over here in the other way. So the data which was there in the row has now been populated in the column. Does that make sense? I I hope this clarifies to both of you, Vaishaki and Prachi. Now, I was just saying this part that this new school of Excel is very good. What it does is that it doesn't require this control shift enter. You don't really need to do that. You simply write equal to transpose, give the range, close the bracket, and press a normal enter. No need to press control shift enter, no need to select the entire range for putting the result. Simply press enter and it will automatically fill it for you. You see, it will automatically fill it for you. This is called data spilling. This feature has been just added in the latest version of Excel. If I type something out here, then it shows a spill error in the latest version. But if I remove it, then the formula works fine. So this is the beauty of this latest function of Excel. So here you see that it's a normal function of Excel that I've entered. Equal to transfer, you give the range and it automatically transposes it. Right? But that trick probably not many of you would be able to use. So if you try it in your machines, it so that's why I thought of sharing the old school of thought only, which was used in the which has been used in the Excel until 2019. So because most of us would be having the older version, so still go with this logic. And I would recommend that even if you have the latest version of Excel, don't use it, because if you're going to send it to the client and the client doesn't have that version, he wouldn't be able to use that, because that these functions do not have backward compatibility as of now. Obviously, backward compatibility means that if you open the latest version formula in the old version of Excel, then it's not going to be supported. It will show you an error. In order to delete the transpose, you have to select the entire range and then press the delete. If you try to press delete in bits and pieces, you wouldn't be able to do that. It will throw an error stating that you cannot change part of an array. So you have to select it in entirety and then only you will be able to delete this. Right? So what's the total, what's the final EPS then? So final EPS is basically the net profit divided by number of shares of ABC and PQR. So before the merger, if you see in the merger plan sheet, we had computed the diluted number of shares over here. I'm going to fix the row here and compute this formula. So it is nothing but net profit divided by F$6, because I want to bring the number of shares from the merger plan sheet, which was already computed here, as 104 million for ABC and 154 for PQR in G6. That gives you the pre-merger EPS. This is the pre-merger EPS. And this one is pre-merger net profit. And as I said here in the yellow highlighted cell that you see on the right hand side, we have got net profit of ABC pre-merger, we have got net profit of PQR pre-merger, we've also got the synergies and merger cost. It's just a simple plus minus now to be able to work out the net profit of merged entity. Right? Take a minute to complete this sheet and then we'll move on to the final file. I'm sorry, it's already 2:55, but I'll take another 10 minutes to wrap up the topic. So just allow me additional 5-10 minutes post 3 o'clock to complete this version. So take a minute to finish off this sheet before moving on to the final file, which is file number 5. So Dipankar, the pre-merger EPS signifies that when the merger had not happened, and if it does not happen, this is how your profit and EPS are going to look like, right? And if the merger happens, what will be the situation that you will add the net profit of both companies, you will add the synergy benefit, you will subtract the merger cost. Then you will be able to see the net profit of the merged entity in case the merger is effective. So this is the significance of pre-merger and post-merger. All right. Any further questions on this? So Dipankar, the point is that yes, when we do the detailed financial modeling exercise over there, also we would have the net profit. We would use that for computing EPS on a standalone basis before the merger or before taking any impact of the merger. That's exactly what this is. All right, great. So let's open the file number 5, which is the last file of this analysis. And if you recollect, while you open the file number 5, you can recollect what we discussed in the very first file. What is the purpose of this entire analysis? The purpose of this entire analysis is to see whether this deal leads to accretion or leads to dilution. That's exactly what we're going to do out, right? So we will compute the EPS of the merged entity. We have already computed EPS of the pre-merger entity over here in the column F, right? So let's go to the file number 5 and do that computation here. Let me increase the zoom. All right, let's come back here. Now, what we are going to do as a first step, after the deal has been executed, or once the deal will be executed, what will be the net profit of the merged entity? This is also termed as pro forma net profit. Pro forma is a term. Pro forma is a term that is typically used to indicate the situation after the merger is completed. Like today, the entities have not been merged, but I'm just doing an analysis. So the pro forma net profit technical jargon is used, which indicates pro forma net profit is typically used to indicate the situation after the merger is completed, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do. But look at this. This 0%, 10%, 20, 30, 40, these are like scenarios, right? Scenarios of deal premium. So eventually the deal will be executed under one of these scenarios. So it's going to be either 0% or 10% or 20 or 30. It's not going to be all of that. It's going to be one of these. So we have these years over here, 2021 to 25. So I'm just trying to work out the data for the next 5 years under all of these scenarios. So you need to be very careful in terms of writing a formula here because the dollar sign will play a major role here. So point number 1, net profit of ABC is available here, 2021, but you have to copy and paste it on the right hand side for the subsequent scenarios, and also you have to copy and paste it down for the subsequent years. So as you go down, you would want the year numbers to be shifted because that's how the base data is included. But this data in the column F needs to be fixed because when you go on the right hand side, the year number, oh sorry, the ABC figures would still be there in column F. So please fix column F. And on the same lines, please fix column G. The reason for this is just to put it in simple terms one more time. When you copy and paste this formula on the right hand side in the subsequent scenarios, you would still want to refer to the same column on the right hand side for the other scenarios as well. So you would need to fix the reference to column F and also the reference to column G. But when you go down, the year number 21 should be shifted to year number 22, 23, 24, and finally 25 as well. So please use this dollar sign appropriately over here. Using the same logic, you would have to pick the synergy number, and synergy is available in synergy sheet over here. And here also you fix just the column F. Just fix the column F, because when you go on the right hand side, your synergy numbers would still be there in the column F. So you don't have to change the column F reference. And last is you subtract the merger cost. So my merger cost is given out here as $578 million per annum. Now this is interesting because this 578 is the annualized merger cost which I would incur in 21, 22, 23, 24 and 25. In all of these years I'm going to incur that under 0% scenario. But as you go on the right hand side, we have got other scenarios. So the scenario number should change, but then the data is going to be only there in row number 24. So please make sure that you fix the reference to row number 24 so that this 578, which is included in 24th row, should not move down when I copy and paste the formula. So the final result is going to be this. So let's have a look at this formula. The formula is equal to let me put it here. Here it is. Let me put that in the red font. So F21, which is ABC's profit before the merger, plus G21, which is PQR's profit before the merger, plus synergy F13, which is the synergy benefit on account of this merger, minus merger cost, which is there in F24. Right? Does that make sense? So take a minute to do it. I don't mean to increase the speed just to finish this off. In case you feel that something is not clear, we can definitely spend the first 15 minutes of the next class as well to discuss any questions in case you have related to it. But just that the concept has been discussed in the last 5 hours, so I just want to complete it in one go so that you're able to relate to the logic. If you want, you can definitely ask question in the next class as well. We will begin. I'll spend first 15 minutes towards this only. First 30 minutes to discuss this in case you have any specific questions related to file number 5. But I think broadly you should be able to. What we are trying to do, we are trying to find out the net profit of the merged entity, and this net profit would eventually be used to compute the post-merger EPS. So the post-merger EPS is basically equal to the post-merger net profit divided by post-merger number of shares. This is how we are going to compute the post-merger EPS, which is essentially this divided by number of shares to be taken from here. If you remember, this is what we had computed before. We have got it in row number 13. I'm going to compute it from here. That's what we get over here. Yeah. All right. So we get the EPS post merger. Yeah, Anuj, I just saw your question. The difference between the different scenarios is mainly due to the merger cost. That's right. because the pre-merger ABC profit and the PQR profit does not, these two things would not change. The synergies would also remain the same. This scenario is going to, increase your merger cost, and hence your profit tends to decline if you pay more and more premium. That's why you see that 1710 reduces to 1600, 1500, 1507, and so on and so forth because of the increase in the merger cost. So that's the major reason for it. Right? And now if you see that this is your post-merger EPS, and here at the top we computed the pre-merger EPS. So if you compare the pre-merger with post-merger, you'll be able to see whether the deal is accretive or dilutive. So in order to work out the accretion or dilution percentage, you simply have to see the accretion or dilution percentage. You simply have to compare the post-merger EPS divided by pre-merger EPS minus 1. This is what you need to do to be able to see if it is actually accretive or dilutive. I have got the post-merger EPS here as 14.38. Now see, when you compare it to 13.07, what do you notice? Has it increased or reduced? Definitely it has increased. It used to be 13.07 before the merger, and now it's going to look like 14.38. So there is a delta. There is a higher amount that I see. And what is that translating to percentage terms? That's roughly about 10%. That's about 10%. So if you see, I'm going to copy and paste this formula everywhere. It'll show you whether it is a positive number leading to accretion or a negative number leading to dilution. All of these positive numbers out here indicate that the deal is accretive, and the negative numbers indicate that the deal is dilutive. So what it means that if you simply look at 2021, the deal will be accretive if you give them 0% deal premium. The deal would still be accretive if you give them 10% deal premium. But the moment you decide to give them 20% deal premium, you would be in loss from the EPS standpoint, because the EPS is going to be dilutive in that case. Or you see that it is only 1% dilution, so probability is breaking even close to about 19% approximately. So we would then see that how this accretion or dilution is going to be impacted on account of this daily premium scenario. So this is what I was starting with. When I started off my discussion, I mentioned this fact that when you look at the final accretion dilution, you will be able to get insights around whether a price is justified or not, because there is a possibility my DCF price is 110, which translates to 10% premium, but I am happy paying 25% or 30% premium also, because it leads to only 7% dilution in the current year, and from next year onwards I'm kind of breaking even, right? Even if you don't go too far, just in the 1 year time you'll be breaking even. So it's just a matter of one single year, so forget about it. Give them 30% if they are asking for it. So if you really need this deal to be executed, then you should be ready to pay an extra premium over and above the DCF as well. And this model tells you that. This exactly is the value or the impact that you're able to evaluate out of this model. Because if you simply stick to the fact that my DCF value is $110, why should I pay $130? Then we wouldn't be able to proceed with this deal and the deal would be called out. But if I understand the logic behind this table and I say that yes, $130 is not a problem because I would be able to break even in the next year itself, let's go ahead and do it. It's just a matter of one single year. It doesn't matter. Right? So this is how we can use a merger model to be able to find out the price at which the deals has to be executed and also build scenarios for taking a decision, for helping us take a decision around the final price to be given. All right. So that's it from my side. What I'm going to do, I'm going to save all of these 5 Excel files along with the 2 other Excel files that we discussed on the valuation piece in the same Google Drive link in the next 10 minutes. So you could download it from there after 10 minutes or so. And if you still have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And next class, as I said, when we begin, I will take up your questions on this topic that we discussed today. And I see, Prachi, you have a question around the conditional formatting that has been applied here. So can I just request you to park this question for the next class? I will discuss it in detail, how the conditional formatting can be applied here. So please bring this as the first question in the next class, and we'll start from there. Otherwise, from the analysis standpoint, that's it from my side. I hope you have been able to get good understanding around why we do this kind of analysis and what is the sequence in which this needs to be done. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye. Okay, I just saw a message that where is that Google Drive link. So I'm just putting it on the screen for everybody's benefit. In fact, let me just put it on the chat window. It is bit.ly/Amardeep-GT. So that's the Google Drive link which you would be able to use. So it's there in the chat window. Venikit, I've just put that in the chat window, copy it from there. But try this link after 10 minutes, please. And Dipankar, your question is if I want to rebuild the financial and the merger mod by myself, I should start with the finance sheets. Yes, that's correct. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can conclude this call.